Show. I'm your host, John Sarianides, and as always, I'm joined by my partner, the incomparable Kevin Stone. Kevin, how are you this evening?
Doing good, man. How are you?
Doing all right. It's been a busy day, of course, with life and work, and then you add to that Eliot Wolf meeting with the media today in his pre-draft meeting. Of course, the NFL draft is next weekend. Then we get some big breaking news this afternoon. Brian Lee, head football coach over at King Philip Regional, steps down. So we've had a busy day here in New England Football Journal, and you know what? We like it when it's busy, but I'm not sure we like it when it's this busy.
Not in
Lots to
April.
talk about tonight for sure.
Yeah, I would say not this busy in April, but um, it does help with the whole all football all the time thing. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly does. And of course, we normally would be brought to you by Mortgage Right, but we are no longer sponsored by them, and we are looking for a sponsor for this show. So if you're interested in sponsoring the New England Football Show, this is our flagship live stream. Feel free to reach out to me or Kevin and let us know what you'd like to do, what you can do, and what your interest is. Again, we would love the opportunity to work with you. You can email me at John, all lowercase. It's John, EWFTBJ at gmail.com. Or you can also reach out to Kevin as well. You can also DM us on any of our social media platforms. Again, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, we would love to talk to you. It's our flagship live stream. Get really good numbers in terms of views. So feel free to reach out if you're interested in sponsoring us, and we can talk to you about rates and what we have to offer and what a sponsorship includes. All right, Kevin. Eliot Wolf meets with the media today in his pre-draft meeting. Of course, you were up there for that. It was in the brand New Balance facility. The Patriots essentially unofficially debuting it today with today's media availability. And Wolf, he spoke for about 15 minutes, had a lot to say, answered a fair amount of questions. I thought he was pretty transparent based on what I've seen. I thought he was pretty open in terms of their view of this draft, how they're going to approach it, the possibilities of trading up or down. He even went as far as talking about A.J. Brown. He was asked about A.J. Brown and the possibility of a trade happening. What were your initial observations in terms of what Eliot Wolf had to say today?
Well, I don't know if he talked about AJ Brown. I don't think he necessarily wants to anymore. I still think that's wide open. I know you were there too, which I didn't
He
even know.
addressed it a lot more than I thought he would, though. I will say that. I thought he
Yeah,
gave a pretty honest answer, all things considered.
yeah. First of all, I didn't even know you were there, so the fact that you snuck in is impressive, especially in that room. But um, look, I think that's wide open still. I don't think there's any question. They just traded for another receiver over the weekend. It's going to happen. I'm just really curious if they really
When
do
you
wait.
say they, you're talking about the Eagles.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, they traded for
Um,
Dontavian Wicks.
yeah, which you know well, as a Packer guy. But um, do they actually wait until June? Like, 'cause the more you think about it, and you've sort of talked me into this, and not that I needed much talking into, but if you move a first rounder next year, what if Drake May gets hurt, week two or something like that, and suddenly, you're picking in the top five again, and that's not your pick. So I'd move 31 at this point. I've always sort of thought that they should or could. But when you also, think about what their needs are, you need D linemen, you need offensive linemen, you need a receiver, you need a tight end. I'm okay with them also sticking there as well. So, and he said this today, they're willing to do whatever to improve the team, and that's always going to be the standard answer. But I genuinely think they're willing to either move the pick um, or get out of the first round altogether. And I say move the pick in terms of moving up. I don't know if they're going to stick and pick at 31. I think it's a case where you either move up or you're out. And that's just sort of how I got or how I read him today. Um, the facility, what he said about the facility, obviously we got a little tour today, and that was awesome. It's going to be a game changer for them in terms of free agency. And look, I said this on Twitter. I know money talks in free agency, money matters, but they were playing catch up with a lot of other organizations. They now have legit facilities to kind of show off when a free agent comes in. And Elliot Wolf even said some of the younger guys coming in on top 30s were complimenting about how it's similar or as good as to where they were coming from an Oregon, from a Bama. So he was all over the place today. But I also thought there was sort of a calmness to the whole process. They don't have to be worried about, making that perfect pick in the top five. It's we'll let the draft come to us, and we'll see what happens over those 3 days. But I thought he was very calm and just sort of ready to go, if you will, for next week.
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway was that everything's on the table, that they're going to explore every possible avenue to improve this roster and add depth. And that was my biggest takeaway. And that could be trading up, that could be trading out of the first round, depending on what the board looks like and what comes their way in terms of offers. He did also talk about whether or not this draft, in terms of talent, stacks up to other ones. He talked about something that I've been saying now for months, that the offensive and defensive line is the strength of this draft. Wolf would agree. The Patriots seem to agree with us that that's the case. I think ultimately what it comes down to is, and you bring up a good point, and I said this yesterday on Patriots Pulse, they're in a pretty good spot here. When you're the last 2 years, you're picking in the top five, you have to get it right. And I'm not saying they don't have to get it right at 31. They do. But the pressure is different. The expectation for that pick is different. Now, I think ultimately they're going to stick and pick. They're going to take a player. And the reason is, and he talked about this, he talked about the importance of this being an impact player who can make an impact for a long period of time, i.e., you want the first round pick because you get the 5th-year option. So they're going to have that option potentially if they stick and pick. And I think ultimately they either go edge or offensive tackle. A dark horse position could potentially be wide receiver, again, depending on how the board shakes out. But ultimately, I don't think they're moving up or down. I think that they're going to field calls. I think that they're going to entertain it. They're going to see how things are going for them. But I think ultimately they're going to stay pat. They're going to stand pat, and they're going to take the best player on the board. Now, remember, Vrabel did say at the owners' meetings a couple of weeks ago that the Patriots don't necessarily draft for need. The only reason I've pushed back on that, Kevin, is I do think ultimately you do draft for need. You have needs, you address those needs. Here's the thing, if they take an edge guy, you're drafting for need. That is a clear need. You have Harold Landry, you have recently signed Draymond Jones, you have Elijah Ponder, but as I've said all along, going back to last season, there are guys short at that position. If you draft a player at that position at 31, you're drafting for need. And I know Vrabel says he doesn't believe in that, but that's what you're doing in essence. That's a position of need. You're addressing it. As far as the A.J. Brown stuff is concerned, and I'm so, quite frankly, sick and tired of talking about A.J. Brown, especially if he doesn't end up here, I'll be really pissed. But I think at the end of the day, he's not getting traded until June 1st or after, because it's not about what the Patriots are going to give up or what any other team is going to give up. What it comes down to is what it's going to cost the Philadelphia Eagles. The cap hit, and they're still going to take a cap hit on him if they trade him. The cap hit is much different. Now, if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, the downside to trading him June 1st or after is the compensation may not be what you want, which is a first round pick. And I think that's ultimately going to be the case. They may have to settle on a second round pick. Now, depending on who you believe, the market right now seems to be the Patriots and only the Patriots. I do think, though, that come June 1st, you could see other teams, as we've talked about, like Kansas City, Baltimore, those teams, Houston, they could potentially enter the mix for him. You might get a couple of NFC teams that enter the mix for him as well. But I still think the Patriots, if he gets moved, and all signs are pointing to it, you mentioned the Eagles trading for Dontavian Wicks this weekend, all signs are pointing to an A.J. Brown trade. If that's the case, I still think the Patriots are his preferred landing spot. It's going to come down to compensation and whether or not they're comfortable giving up what Philadelphia is ultimately going to want. Now, I think we all universally agree. You don't give up that 2027 first round pick. You just don't do that because you don't know. Next year, you're playing a much tougher schedule. You don't know what next season's going to hold. That could potentially be a top 10, top 15 pick. You don't want to give that up here for 29-year-old wide receiver. So I don't think ultimately that's going to be the case. I think if he ends up here, they're going to end up having to negotiate something. But that, based on what Eliot Wolf said today, I still think that is a strong possibility that if nothing else, the Patriots are in on A.J. Brown. You could potentially still see him end up in New England prior to training camp at some point. We'll see. I thought some of the other things that he said as well, I thought were were pretty, informative as well. He talked about the fact that, the process of evaluating players and how that works and where they're at in their process right now, how they're still meeting and determining how they want their board to look as they get towards next Thursday. There's still a lot of work to be done. Wolf kept reiterating that, and he's right. There still is a lot of work that needs to be done in order for the Patriots to reach a consensus in terms of where they want to go with their picks. They do have 11 picks. I think it's safe to say I don't think they're going to use all 11 of them. But I'll be honest with you, Kevin, if you told me they used 8 or 9 of them, it wouldn't surprise me. I do think you're going to see them move around a lot on day 3. They do have 4 6-round picks, and I think they're going to use those picks in the middle to later part of day 3 to maneuver around. But I do think ultimately, as much as people around here are afraid at the possibility of them trading out of the first round, I don't see it happening. I could see a trade up, trade down. I don't, because I do think they value that 5th-year option. So I think that they ultimately take a player there. But overall, I thought he gave us a lot that we can chew on in terms of where they're at in the draft process.
Yeah, so just in terms of the flexibility he talked about, and you just mentioned moving around the board, I do think you're going to see them, like you said, do a lot on day 3, maybe do day 2 as well. They have 11 picks. Like, you're not going to use all of them. To your point, I would like to see them use a majority of them, but I do think you're going to see movement from them heavily on one of those days. And the other thing we didn't mention, the Christian Gonzalez thing. And the wording he used is something we've talked about for a few weeks now. He keeps saying he's under contract. He's under contract. They're not in a rush to do this. And I think Gonzalez's camp, rightfully so, wants to get it done. But the more you hear them talk, whether it's Wolf or Vrabel, he's going to play on his deal this year. I generally believe that. And I also think you're going to end up looking at, we'll have a story at some point, whether it's OTAs or whether it's training camp, that, hey, where's Christian? I think we're heading for that at some point. Just the way they're talking about it, he seemed very nonchalant about getting a deal done today.
Well, but he brought up a good point. Gonzalez is under contract. They're
Correct.
going to pick up his 5th-year option next month.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
He's under contract.
Yep.
It's not like he's either a free agent or he's going to be a free agent next offseason. If they pick up his 5th-year option, technically speaking, they still have control over him next season and the year after. So, again, this is something that I have said in recent weeks, which is, what is their incentive to rush this? Of course, they like the player and they want to keep him. Of course, they see him as a foundational piece. But from the Patriots' perspective, if you know that you're more than likely going to have to set the market with him financially, why do you need to rush it? Now, I know a lot of people, and I've argued this with John Sapichetti on Patriots Pulse about the fact, well, it's going to cost you more if you wait. I'm not saying that the Patriots want to wait necessarily, but there's also no incentive for them to rush this, knowing that they have him under contract. And if push comes to shove and he decides, I'm not showing up to OTAs, or I'm not showing up to minicamp, or dare I say he holds out for a portion of training camp, yeah, that might expedite the process and they get something done. But ultimately, what it comes down to, in my opinion, is the Patriots have a little bit of leverage here in that they're in no hurry to get it done. I think internally they know that ultimately he's going to set the market, but what's their incentive to hurry up and get it done? I think this notion that they have to get it done because it's going to cost them more in a year from now, I think that's foolish. I don't think it's going to cost them more. I think ultimately what it comes down to is, are they willing to set the market, and what does that number look like? Because Albert Breer talked about him possibly asking for $40 million a year the other day. That ain't happening. Nobody's giving him $40 million a year, let alone the Patriots. Patriots, I don't think are going to mind setting the market with him, but that number is probably going to be $1 million to $2 million, maybe $1.5 million per year more than what Trent McDuffie just got from the Rams a few weeks ago. So, yes, they're willing to set the market, but I also don't think they're in a hurry.
No, it's interesting. He doesn't feel like a guy that would start a war, if you will, with the team.
Oh, when it comes to money, though,
100%, I was going to say.
yeah,
100%.
money matters, and I think at the
Yes.
end of the day, he may not come across as that guy, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
But when you start messing with a man's bank account, that changes their demeanor.
Well, it's a respect factor too, right? Like that's all
Yeah.
the money is in
And
the
he can
NFL.
point to the Super Bowl and say, look what I
Correct.
did against Jackson Smith and Jigba. Yeah, they won, but
Yeah.
I erased him. He was a non-factor in that game.
No, that game's a blowout at halftime if it's not for him.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, maybe. But the
Close
bottom
to it.
line is, regardless of that, I think he and his camp can point to
Yes.
that and say, well,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yep. 100%.
So, yeah. Now, you had an opportunity to tour the New Balance facility. Of course, Patriots unofficially opening it today by welcoming the local media for Eliot Wolf's pre-draft press conference. You got a chance to tour the facility along with about 34 other members of the media. And for two-part question for you. One, what did you think? You kind of gave us a little bit of a glimpse of what you thought of the facility. And two, what was the general sense that you got from the other members of the media that were there in terms of their thoughts on the Patriots' new facility?
So I'll start with the second part. And look, everybody's impressed. It's a beautiful building. I mean, you saw just the media workroom, but the media workroom is even incredible. I mean, we've been there now for, I think, three different kind of variations of a media workroom. This one blows it out of the water by far. So,
Well, you have space.
yeah,
That's the number one thing I noticed. I mean,
yeah,
in the old media workroom, the cameras were right on top of you.
yeah.
Now you'll have some room to work with.
Yeah, so that's again for our sake, that was a cool part of the building, but just some of the finer details, like we can't talk too much about it, obviously, but there's a room next to some of the team meeting rooms. That's basically the only way I can describe it is a field in a giant room, and there's also video boards. Instead of whiteboards, it's video boards all around the room, so you can have film on the wall and kind of go from the meeting room to the field without actually being outside. It's an incredible kind of thing to have. Now, you can make the argument that they're playing catch up. There's Division One schools that have what we saw today. It's just that's the reality of college football right now. There's the Oregons, the Bamas, the Ohio States, the Georgias. They all have what we saw at Foxborough today. But having said that, Eliot Wolf, and I think I mentioned this earlier, he talked about kids coming on their 30 visits and mentioning how nice this place is compared to where they just came from, a big time program. So I do think it's going to help free agency at some point. Now, again, I said this money says more than anything, but if a guy can enjoy going to work every day and not have, a rundown 25-year-old building, which is what Gillette is now, it makes coming to the job site every day easier. So just the amenities they have, the cafeteria is awesome, different, kind of stations. And but I'm just trying to think, off the top of my head, the weight room was incredible. It's night and day compared to what they have in Gillette Stadium now. The locker room it dwarfs the one they have inside Gillette. So it's really just an upgrade. And ultimately, I think it sort of helps the everyday organizational productivity, we'll call it. I think everybody's going to be better at their job day in and day out because of the building they now have.
Scott checks in. He says, "Hey, boy, Scott, great hearing from you, man. I know it's been a while." And yes, Scott, I did see your other comment here. Absolutely. We definitely can chat. Looking forward to catching up with you there. Thanks for checking in, brother. Appreciate the time as always. No, I think you make a great point about them catching up. I mean, it's no secret. We've seen it in the NFLPA grades the last couple of years. The Patriots have not scored well when it comes to facilities, whether that includes the team playing or on-site facilities. They have not scored well. So I think, and that motivated a lot of it, right? If you go back a couple of years when they announced that they were going to build this facility, a lot of it was motivated by those report cards. And by the way, basically took them 2 years to build this thing. It's
Yeah.
pretty impressive. Probably less than that if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it really started going up, last training camp?
Yeah.
Like, that's when the structure was there.
Yeah. I mean, I would say probably at best a year and a half. But the point is, they needed this, and I think you bring up a great point about how they're on par now with the rest of the league. Now, a facility like this probably puts you a little bit ahead of some other organizations around the league because you still have organizations that don't hold training camp on site, that they still go off to colleges and do it. So the Patriots will probably be ahead of some of the organizations around the league. But I think at the end of the day, Yes, it will help with free agency. Yes, it will help in terms of when you bring rookies in for their top 30 visits. You have the local pro day the other day. It helps with all that. But as we know, the ultimate elixir when it comes to professional sports or sports at any level is winning, success. And it's great to have the facilities, but now you got to put them to use and continue to have success on the field. Patriots are coming off a great season, but now they have to maximize what they have, take advantage of what they have so that they can build off of last season and potentially make another Super Bowl run in this upcoming season. Obviously, as we know, it'll be much tougher with their schedule for next season, but I think it is important now. They've bridged that gap. Now, what they're going to do with the airplane, that remains to be seen. But at the end of the day, now, if you're Mike Vrabel, the front office, the coaching staff, the scouting department, the personnel department, you have all the tools you need to be successful. The facility is top notch. You have everything there that you need to win. Now it's a matter of getting it done on the field. And obviously, based on what we saw last year, the expectation is that the Patriots are going to be a contender year in and year out as long as Mike Vrabel is here. So,
yeah, I was just gonna say I'm smiling because you reminded me at the very end of our tour today, and John Stryker was the one that gave it. So a quick thank you to him. He was great. Our good buddy Dan Roach and Dan Roach Fasten said, "You better win now," and he's not wrong. They have to. This man needs to mean something. You can't have this kind of upgrade and then win 4 games next year. But and it's a very small thing, but you know what I'm talking about. That walk from the locker room to the practice field and up those steps to the players, that no longer exists. That was a small thing, but it mattered. And those freezing cold days in November, December, January, that's a kind of a long walk to go to practice and deal with that every day. So they walk right out to the practice field now. It's what it should be for an NFL team.
Scott checks back in. You're making me feel old. Gillette still feels new to me. It does. And
Oh,
it's hard to
true, right?
believe that it's going on 24 years old now,
It's
which is
crazy.
crazy. But
Yeah, it's not.
Scott also says, did anyone ask about verbal today at the press conference? No, not really. The only thing we gleaned from what Eliot Wolf had to say was that it's abundantly obvious that he's involved in all facets of the draft process.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say it was a great question by Phil Perry today. He asked Eliot Wolf, how involved has Vrabel been? And he gave a great detailed answer. And I thought it was interesting, and you could probably speak to this a little better. He talked about Vrabel, the scouting department and Wolf maybe liking someone, but Vrabel sort of explaining why he might not fit. And I think that's huge to have a head coach that's willing to override the entire department like that, especially this time of year.
Well, and it speaks to the amount of power that he has within the
Sure. Yeah.
organization that he can do that. Because
Yeah.
in other organizations that have a more traditional structure with a general manager and a head coach, the head coach is one of the voices. He's not the overriding voice. It could be the general manager, it could be the owner, depending on the structure. In this situation, Vrabel is clearly the boss. He runs it all. And this is his front office. Cowden is his guy. Wolf has become his guy. And so ultimately, they're going to acquiesce to him and what he wants. And that's the way it should be, by the way, because the head coach and his staff are coaching the players, not the front office. They should be the deciding voice in a lot of ways in these meetings in terms of who they're going to take and who they're not going to take. So I think at the end of the day, it's not a surprise to me that that question was answered the way it was answered, because that's the truth. That's the reality. He is ultimately the tiebreaker. He is the final decision maker. So obviously, he's going to get to coach these guys, and he wants guys that fit in culturally and athletically, guys that can fit the scheme and fit the locker room. Scott says, "Sorry to bring up the elephant in the room. Hey, no worries, man. You know what? It's a free country. We can talk about whatever we want." Scott also adds, "I hope this is much ado about nothing." I hope. Yep, we hope the same thing. And it, for us, it's a hard topic to talk about because I think at the end of the day, it's a very personal topic, and quite frankly, and Kevin and I, we've talked about this before we went live. You know what? It's not football related, and I know that may seem like a cop out, and we're taking the easy way out. We talked about it yesterday on Patriots Pulse extensively, and I don't think we need to rehash that. Kevin, you certainly have your opinions on it, but I think at the end of the day, you know what? It's a personal matter. It doesn't involve football. And quite frankly, I don't think that we have a duty as members of the media to talk about what people are doing on their personal time. That's their business, who they hang out with, what they do. We're here to talk football and football only.
The only thing I'll say is there was what 40 people there today. Not one of them has said a single word about it or written about it. There's a reason for that. We talk a lot about on the show about how important relationships are, and it's just sort of it's where it is. It's a big topic nationally and understandably so, but we're around that team every single day.
Yeah.
There's no reason for us to say anything about it because we don't know anything about it. So it
Right.
is what it is.
Because if we say anything about it, you're talking out of turn. And I
Correct.
think ultimately, and by the way, Scott says, I understand. Sorry, guys. No need to
No,
apologize, brother. I mean,
not at
it's
all.
not at all. There's literally no reason to apologize. I
No.
think, and I think Kevin brings up a great point in that it didn't come up today. And you know what? If you look at the media landscape, it hasn't been something that's come up. And I'm sure that some people might be frustrated with that, but at the end of the day, that has nothing to do with football. And
No,
we're there to cover the New England Patriots, not people's lives. We cover their lives as football players, and we might do a feature on them if there's an aspect of their life off the field that we want to cover. But ultimately, we're there to talk about the Patriots, the NFL draft. That's what we're there for. So I think
no.
ultimately, people did their job today, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, no. I mean, look, when a player commits a crime, we're going to talk about it. Like that's different. But in general, there's just no reason to go there. Frankly, we don't know anything about it.
Yeah. And Scott says, I know you guys are in the thick of it and understood. Yeah, no, absolutely. And we appreciate you checking in and wanting to talk about the Patriots and everything that happened up there today with Eliot Wolf's presser and the tour and even bringing up
No,
the current situation. But again, you know what? At
right.
the end of the day, we're not educated enough on it or have enough facts to have an opinion. So
No, just one
that's
thing that
that.
did come up. One thing that did come up yesterday, and it's annoying. Mike Vrabel was never scheduled to talk today. Never. Yes, he did the press conference last year. Eliot Wolf was always scheduled to be the guy talking today. Mike Vrabel did not duck the media in any way. People were getting on, some of our media colleagues yesterday on social media for poor reporting, and that's just dumb. Mike Vrabel from day one was never going to speak today. He'll speak on draft night, probably night one on Thursday next week, and then during OTAs sometime in mid-May. We had the schedule, but I don't have it off the top of my head. But it was Eliot Wolf today, Eliot Wolf only. Mike Vrabel was never supposed to speak. So
Right.
just to clarify.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point. And again, I know sometimes listen, you see it, you see it even last year during the playoffs where people want you to ask, quote, tough questions. Well, I don't know how much tougher questions you could have asked in that situation. I'm not quite sure what constitutes a tough question. I thought that our colleagues and us, I thought we did a pretty good job handling the Barmore dig stuff. And I thought, particularly with Barmore, I thought some of our colleagues in the media group up there did a great job of asking the hard hitting questions. I sometimes I don't know what people want. I don't think people understand that there's give and take that goes into covering a professional sports team, no matter what the league is, and maintaining a positive relationship with the organization and the coach and the players is important. It matters. And it doesn't just matter because our access depends on it. It matters because ultimately this is something I've learned through the years as I've grown and matured as a coach, as a teacher, as an administrator. You get more done by doing it the right way than doing it a certain way. And I think at the end of the day, as the old adage goes, you get more if you do it with honey instead of vinegar or something along those lines. I think I butchered it, but you get my point. Like, you can't, I know that people want the hard hitting questions, but at the end of the day, you're not up there to bust their balls or annoy them. You're up there to talk about that week's game, their role in the game, their health status. These are the things that you're up there to talk about. You're not up there to delve into their personal lives and start asking personal questions. And so I think people need to start developing a better understanding of what the media's role is when they cover a sports team.
No chance that's going to happen. But and look, they're all coming from a point of there's two. I think there's one they wish they could be there ask the questions, and I get that. We all grew up and started, excuse me, as fans. And the other thing too is everybody now just wants immediate answers, and that's just not going to happen. That's just not how things work. But because of social media, you think you're inclined to an answer right away, or that someone's going to figure something out right away and get you an answer. That's just not how it works. Like, for example, were we supposed to ask him if he should be fired today? Like, ask Eliot Wolf.
Right.
Like, I saw that, I think it was Polymarket or something, had should Mike Vrabel be fired on social media this morning.
Right.
What are we doing, man? Like, it's just not how
Right.
it works.
Yeah, it's idiotic. It really is, and it's unfortunate. Scott checks back in. So is AJ still possible? Yes, 100%.
Yeah, I
I still
think
think
it's
he is. It's
guaranteed.
going to come down to when the trade happens, which I think we all agree it's not going to be next weekend, more than likely. It's going to be after June 1st because of the cap ramifications for the Eagles. It's going to come down to compensation. If Philadelphia can live without a first round pick, then I think there's a really good chance the Patriots and the Eagles get something done. If they're steadfast about wanting a first round pick in return, and I know a lot of people love to tongue bathe Howie Roseman and the way he does things, that's fine. The Patriots are not giving up a first round pick for AJ Brown. I would be shocked if we saw that come across the ticker in June that they gave up a 2027 first round pick for him. No chance that happens. Brad checks back in. He says the Pats have been linked to edge people, and Wolf said today that the defensive line is a top strength of this draft. Yeah, they have. And it's interesting, Brad, and thank you for checking in. It's interesting because talking to scouts, I've heard mixed things. They love the athleticism and the speed of that edge group, but they are really honing in on certain guys. And I think the difference is the length. It's the size. A lot of the 6'2" guys that are the twitchier, faster guys, they may not necessarily, and I'm paraphrasing here, but from what I've been told, that the height thing wasn't an issue for them with Will Campbell. The height thing is an issue for them with this edge group. They want more length. They want longer guys. That's what they want. So if that's the case, a lot of these tweener outside linebacker edge types like the Cassius Howells, the Mason Thomases, those undersized guys, if what I'm hearing is true, and again, who knows? I mean, I trust my sources, but if what I'm hearing is true, the length is going to be a deciding factor in who they draft at that position. If that's the case, I would zero in on Zion Young, Gabe Hawkins from Illinois, Malachi Lawrence from Central Florida. Those are going to be guys that fit more of the way they want to play. Ken Matthias checks in. Actually, hold on. Before we get to Ken, we have another question here from Scott. These people don't realize you have to face coaches and players every day. No, Scott, they don't, unfortunately. And they don't realize that people in the media have a job to do, that they're not up there to simply hang out and shoot the shit with Vrabel and the players and Eliot Wolf. No, they're there to do a job. Everybody there is a professional. It's a professional environment. So unfortunately, it's not that easy. But thanks again for checking in, Scott. Ken Matthias checks in. He says, hey, gents, heading into next week's draft, do you guys see a move up for the Patriots on day one or trade for either a wide receiver or pass rush? I think I'm pretty convinced they're going to stand pat and take a player. I think they're going to explore, based on what we heard today, they're going to explore trade avenues and trade possibilities. But I still think they're going to stick and pick at 31. You never know if they get a sense that A.J. Brown's not a possibility, that Philadelphia is not moving off that first round pick demand. Yes, they could pivot and go in another direction there at wide receiver, at least. Pass rush is hard to come by. I think you're going to have to draft a guy that's a pass rusher. Thanks for checking in, Ken. And Scott checks back in and he says, is Diggs still possible, if not AJ? I think he is possible based on what Wolf said at the owners' meetings, but I'm not as convinced as other people are around here that that door is still open. I don't think it is.
No, so I have to play catch up. I have to go back a few comments here. One, on the edge thing, he did say they want to get faster at the edge today. Would they take speed over length?
They could. They
Yeah.
could, but just talking to people that are familiar with their thinking, Draymond Jones was signed because, and Wolf talked about this today,
Yeah.
the ability to play across the defensive line. That's why they That's why they signed rather Draymond Jones, because he's a guy that they're familiar with. They know him as a player. Vrabel knows him from Ohio State. He's a guy that can play defensive end. He can play defensive tackle. He can also play in a 2-point stance and rush or drop. He can do a lot of different things. I think they're going to be more inclined to want to draft because Harold Landry isn't necessarily that guy. He can drop in coverage, but he's a little bit more of the undersized guy. I think they're going to be more inclined to want, because they have that in Ponder too. They're going to want to draft a guy like the guys I mentioned because I think they're longer. I think that they could be more stout against the run in terms of setting an edge. And I think they're guys that offer you enough scheme versatility that in certain sub packages, you could probably kick them inside and they can rush from inside as well as either a 3-tech or a head up as part of a stunt or as an inside shade technique. So I think ultimately they're going to prefer to do that versus taking the more undersized guy that, yes, may be an effective pass rusher, but may not develop into a 3-down player, which is ultimately what I think they're looking for.
So that's where I think Vrabel comes into play on draft night. Having a guy that can kind of distinguish exactly what you need or what a certain player can do. That's where I think having him sort of have ultimate say is huge in that draft. On AJ Brown, I think it's a done deal. I don't know when. I don't know if it's going to be next weekend somehow or if it's going to be in June. But I just think there's too much smoke there to not get this done somehow, some way. Whether it's Philly just eating that money, whatever it is, I think it's getting done. But and then for Diggs, look, if this Vrabel stuff, and again, we're not gonna get into it, but if any of it is, or should I say, if any of it becomes more than what it already is, you're gonna kind of back off the whole circus, if you will, between Barmore and Diggs, and now your head coach maybe getting involved with something. I just don't bring him back for more so the off the field stuff. But again, he's going to be 33 and he disappeared the postseason. You got nothing out of him when it mattered the most. So, as a name and a body, sure, but I just don't know if he actually helps you.
Yeah. I don't think he does. Scott checks back in. He says, is Crosby trade a no-go? Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to move him. I think he's going to probably end up staying in Vegas. You never know. But
you never know. Next week, you never know. All kinds
you
of
never know,
happens.
but I don't think the Patriots are going to be in on him. I
No.
really don't. Unless they completely pivot at 31, go either offensive tackle or wide receiver, go another position completely off the board, and then turn around and trade for him on a Saturday for a future second round pick, something along those lines, or on a Friday night even for their second or third rounder. But overall, I don't, and that's not going to get it done because Baltimore gave up a first in that original trade. So I don't see a day 2 or 3 pick for that matter getting it done. I think that they're going to need more than that. So I'd be surprised. I think he's a long shot. I think Ken checks back in, and he says, "Why do you guys think the Gonzalez contract keeps getting drawn out? Still early in the offseason." We talked about this earlier because he's under contract for essentially 2 more years, this upcoming season and the following season if they pick up his 5th-year option next year. So again, as I've said all offseason, I'm not sure that the Patriots are in as much of a hurry to get this done as people think they should be. And this notion that, well, if you don't pay him now, it's going to cost more a year from now. It might, but you also have to look at it this way. Is there a corner out there right now that could potentially set the market before him? There isn't, because Stingley, Surtain, McDuffie, all of these guys have gotten paid. So between now and next offseason, I'm not sure there's another corner out there that outside of maybe Witherspoon in Seattle, I'm not sure there's another corner out there right now that could set the market like he can. So yes, from the Patriots' perspective, I don't think that there's a rush.
No, and look, this is now the second time that Wolf has reiterated he's under contract. They're in no rush, and they've made that very, very clear.
Yep. No, I agree. So we'll see. Lots to talk about. Obviously, we'll have a lot more to talk about next week as we enter draft week. And as always, we'll have a ton of coverage at New England Football Journal. So make sure you visit anyfootballjournal.com for all your NFL draft needs. All right. You are watching / listening to the New England Football Show. I'm your host, John Sarianides. As always, I'm joined by Kevin Stone. And Kevin, of course, spring practices starting to wind down in New England. We had some of them wrap up this weekend. Boston College wrapped up on Saturday. UConn wrapped up on Saturday. Harvard wrapped up on Saturday. We have a few more wrapping up here next week. And then we'll have a bunch of them wrapping up around the first weekend in May. But let's start there. Boston College wrapping up this weekend. Of course, the media was not granted access to the final practice on Saturday. Just some overall thoughts on what you saw from the Eagles this spring and what can we look forward to as we get closer to fall camp in August?
Defense, and more defense. They're going to win on defense this year. I think you agree. Look, people need to relax about the offense. Like a lot of the donors and fans that were able to see the team a few times this camp, the offense is brand freaking new. Not only is the play caller new in Bill O'Brien, the entire offense is new. The O-line, the quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, and
You
tight
mean
ends.
it's new from a personnel perspective?
Yes. Well, scheme-wise, too. Bill O'Brien has said he's completely changed the offense. And I've said this to you a bunch of times. I think it's going to look a lot like the 2001 Patriots. A ton of running backs and tight ends. They're going to have a lot of 12-play, 15-play drives, just grind it out, win games 20-10, 17-10 if you have to. I think that's what you're going to see from them this year. But their defense is going to be legit. And now, look, I always fall into this trap. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. It's only April. Even in training camp, I'll fall for it in August too. But they look deeper, and that secondary is for real. All of those kids that are now going to see significant time were thrown into the fire last year. That secondary got a ton of playing time. Now you have KP Price back in at safety. Carter Davis is back. You have Ashton Cunningham, Marcus Upton, transfer Cam Howard. That secondary has a lot of players in the mix. And then they have real linebackers now. You have a Bodie Cahoon from Notre Dame and an Anthony Polano from Washington State. And I said this to you the day you saw them. They look like alphas. They act like alphas in that room. This is no disrespect to anybody they've had, at that position because we've gotten a lot. We've dealt with a lot of great kids over the years. Old McGowan comes to mind right away, but that linebacker room is very different compared to what they've had in recent years. And then defensive line, that's probably the biggest question up front, I'd say. But local guys like Mika Amidi are coming on strong. Demetrius Ballard, a transfer from Buffalo, kid's enormous. KJ Sampson, another transfer, came on strong in camp. So I think they're going to win a lot on defense. And the offense, you're going to have to see in training camp what happens there. We talked about it 2 weeks ago as well. Kalen Chazinski is huge. If he's out for that offense, they're going to have to figure it out. He's a huge weapon there in that pass game. But overall, if I had to give a grade per se, I'd say C plus for the offense and like an A minus for the defense. I really believe in that defense.
Yeah, and Ted Roof obviously looks like he's paying dividends.
It's
Of course, we know
amazing.
about his history with Bill O'Brien, so looks like he's paying dividends. I was impressed from what I saw from that defense as well when I visited with the Eagles earlier in spring ball. The offense is going to take time, and it is because it's all about the personnel, and you're breaking in a lot of new personnel. Whether Mason McKenzie's the quarterback or anyone else, there's going to be a period of time there that they're going to need to get acclimated. Now, I love the running back room. I love the depth at running back. They have a lot of backs that I think can touch the ball and make plays both as runners and receivers. That's going to be a strength of the team. The offensive line is going to be younger than we're used to the last few years when they've had veteran groups. They're going to be younger, but there's a lot of talent there. So I think early on, to your point, they're going to run the football. They're going to ball control people. They're going to try to win with the quick and intermediate passing game, perimeter screens, get the ball out of McKenzie's hands as quick as possible. And yes, we think ultimately he will be the starting quarterback. But I do think that at the end of the day, I was impressed with what I saw when we visited. I like the makeup of the team. If they can get quality quarterback play, take care of the football, and the defense can play half as better as last year's unit did, they're going to be much better and they're going to be a bowl team. Now, how many games they win? We have plenty of time this offseason to debate that, but they are certainly a better looking football team than when we last saw them at the end of last season.
Yeah, I won't be saying 10 wins. I'll tell you that right now. I've learned my lesson, but I'm high on him. And it's a small thing, too. You have a kicker going into training camp. Special teams is a huge factor for this team this year. It has to be better. I think it will be.
Yeah, and looking at some of the comments here, Scott checks back in. We're going to go back to the Pats here for a sec. He says, any updates on Will Campbell's development? No
Uh,
updates. I mean,
honestly, I didn't even think of it until I just saw this question. And I'm surprised it wasn't asked today, frankly.
yeah, yeah, me too, especially because he did talk about Morgan Moses and the
Yeah.
offensive tackle position.
Was there,
But no update on Campbell yet. We haven't gotten any word from the Patriots as far as surgery or him healing or whether or not he'll be ready to participate in the offseason program. We haven't heard anything on that front.
Chris,
So
before we read that real quick, I was kind of thrown off by that question today. I just assumed he was back. Did you ever think he wasn't coming back?
the what I got out of that was, is it a possibility that he was contemplating
Retiring?
retirement?
Yeah, maybe.
And then it begs a different question. Had they won the Super Bowl, would he be retiring? I mean, guys in his
Yeah.
mid-30s, you win a Super Bowl, you've in essence done it all. You made a bunch of money, you won a championship. What's the point of sticking around? So that's where my mind went when that question was asked about him and him returning next season. So my guess is that there might have been conversations, or at least there might have been conversations that have been had between the Patriots and Moses, and there might be some speculation out there that maybe he was contemplating retirement. Who knows? But yeah, I agree with you. I thought that was an interesting question. Brad checks back in. He says, in terms of receivers, a number one has never been a true necessity for Josh McDaniels, except for Moss. They've done pretty well without one. It is why I don't think they go crazy trying to obtain AJ Brown. I think Brad brings up a good point about them not having a reliance on a quote unquote number one receiver. And I think it's a very valid point. And I do tend to agree with Brad, Kevin, that I'm not sure that they're going to go crazy after Brown. As I said earlier, it's going to have to make sense for them from a compensation standpoint. I don't think they're going to give up a first round pick for him. I think that if they can get away with not giving up their second round pick in 27, they're going to do it. Although I don't think you get them if you don't give it up. But I do think the bottom line here is they'll be in on him. They'll have those or continue to have those conversations with Philadelphia. But I do agree with Brad in that I'm not sure that they're going to be willing to overpay to get AJ Brown.
No, and two things to this. One, that's where Romeo Dobbs comes in. I think people might underestimate what he brings to the table. And two, yeah, it was nice for Diggs to, or excuse me, for May to have a guy like Diggs where he could hone in on him. But I just wonder if not having a guy constantly in his ear about demanding the ball could also help out too. So not having that true number one or having a diva, for lack of a better term, again, yeah, he was great for that run last year, but I think this is now May's team. I think if anybody should be the alpha voice, it's him, and I don't know if you need that true number one receiver voice in that run.
No, and I think that's a valid point as well. But I mean, again, I think you're looking at it from the perspective of if you add him, you're adding him to improve your receiver room. It's not so much about the leadership with him as much as it
Oh,
is
oh, of course,
about what
yeah.
he brings to the table as a receiver. Scott checks back in. Was O'Brien with the Pats in 2001 maybe a water boy? He was not with the Patriots in 2001, and he certainly was not a water boy.
That's
That's
a
for
hell of a
sure.
way to that's a hell of a way to spell O'Brien too.
It is. Yes. Yeah, I think it says O'Brien. Bill O'Brien. Thanks for checking in, Scott. Appreciate you, man. Mr. G. Fetty checks in. Great to hear from you, Mr. G. Fetty. Another loyal viewer slash listener of the show. He says they hosted Cyrus Allen too for a visit before the draft. We'd love to see him come to the squad if they don't get AJ Brown. Yeah, I think Cyrus Allen could be a really good fit. Here's the thing. The only thing I'll say about Cyrus Allen, though, Mr. G. Fetty, is if you're going to take a guy with that build, I prefer Sky Bell from UConn. I know that we're probably going to be viewed as being a little partial because we've covered him the last 3 years. I do think he might be a little bit of a more versatile fit than an Allen, but I think Allen is the more gifted athlete and could potentially be more of a big play receiver than Sky Bell, although Bell made a bunch of big plays in his college career. But I still think, and I will say this, if we're going to go based on what they need at the receiver position, I think they need, and I've said this now for a few weeks, I think they need that true big X receiver that can play on the backside of trips. You can isolate him one-on-one in plus territory or the red zone, throw him back shoulder fades, true fades, corner routes, things of that nature where he can body up corners and win one-on-one. I think they need more of that guy because Dobbs is going to be what he was in Green Bay. They're going to move him around and do different things with him. And then you have Kayshon Boutte, who's very similar in that you can do the same things with him. Then you have the speed guys in Pop and Kyle Williams. I think now the best, and this is why I think they are pursuing A.J. Brown. I think the next logical body type that you want to add to that mix is that big X receiver. If they take one early in this draft, that too is going to be an indication to us whether or not they're in on A.J. Brown anymore or not.
If they take a guy like Sky Bell, does that sort of spell anything out for you in terms of Pop? Because I'm still not convinced he's here through training camp.
Well,
Even though
I think Skylar Bell offers you a lot more alignment versatility than Pop. I think he can play the Z, he can play the F. In certain personnel groupings, he can even play the X. They value that, and I think that that is going to carry some weight with them. And look, if they go receiver early, like I said, it's going to tell us a lot about what they think of the possibility of getting A.J. Brown. But I also think it could end up being an indictment on a couple of those guys. By the way, I'm going to put this out there, and I'm not looking to start a fire here, but I'm not convinced they don't move Kayshon Boutte in this draft. I'm not convinced he's a free agent after next year. I'm not so sure, especially if they think they can get A.J. Brown or they draft a receiver early. I would not be surprised if he was traded on draft weekend for a pick or a future compensation.
100%. I do think
when I say a pick, I mean a pick in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, if you had to pick between the two, I'd say Boutte's probably the more likely guy to stay just because of the production. But I'm not convinced both of those guys, or at least one of them, are here through training camp.
Scott says the Barefoot Wild Men are staying with us, correct? Yes. Matt Collins is still currently on the roster, and right now he's the closest thing you have to that true big X receiver. And I do think he'll be on the roster next year. I think he's going to provide a lot of leadership. I think he's going to give them a nice big target. And again, they may not see that as a need as much as we do. I think it's a bigger need for them than you think. Go back to the mid 2010s when you had Brendan LaFell. That's a guy, for example, that made a lot of plays for them as that X receiver. They really haven't had that. They need that. And as good as Hollins is, I think he's better in this system if you move him around, motion him, align him in different alignments. I'm not sure he wins one-on-one consistently as a true X receiver. I think you need a guy that's probably a little bit more athletic than Hollins at that position. And Scott says the Barefoot Wild Man is staying with us, correct. So he asked that twice. Yes, as far as we know, Matt Collins will be back. UConn, let's get back to the college game here. UConn, Jason Candle meeting with the media on Sunday. Of course, they had their spring showcase on Saturday. They didn't have it last year, Jim Moore's last year. The last time they did a spring showcase, it was actually on campus in 2024. Jason Candle liked what he saw from his football team. He had a lot of good things to say. Looks like the quarterback competition is wide open. Former Wachusett standout Tucker McDonald, I think, is squarely in the middle of it. And I think he's going to have a really good shot at potentially being the starting quarterback of the Huskies. Candle talked about his skill group. He really likes what he's seen from those guys, specifically running back Trey Cornist. And then he also talked about the defense, the front seven. He likes what he's seen from those guys. Overall, he seems pretty pleased with where the program is at the end of spring ball. But the Huskies, he also acknowledged, still have a long way to go before camp. So you could see some more roster movement. And I think from a speed, strength, and development standpoint, Candle thinks that, yes, we've brought in a lot of talent, but these guys need some work.
The fact that they even looked the way they looked the other day is impressive. The entire team is brand new. What was it, 53 guys? I think it was.
More than that. I think it's closer to 60.
So the fact that they're functioning as a football team, I'm never going to get over that. That thumbs up is just the best. It cracks me up every time. I'm a child when it pops up. The fact that they, again, are even functional to the point where, people were entertained by the product the other day. And shout out to the UConn fans. The fact that they still had a spring game and people showed up for it is important. Because if people don't show up, those are gone. They might be, gone soon anyways. But if people keep showing up to them, they're going to at least continue to try to have them. So Good job by the UConn fan base. But Kendall, when we talked to him down at the Big Rhode Island Clinic, what was that, the second week of March, first weekend in March, and I talked to him about just getting everybody on the same page. He said it's going to be hard. It's 53 new guys and a new staff. Well, they found a way. And now it'll be interesting to see sort of, do they lose momentum heading into training camp, or can they build on it now? So I think they're going to be better than people think. And I think having Kendall as a guy to lead them, they're going to fly under the radar. But I'd expect them to be in bowl contention again.
Oh, 100%. And I think he's brought in guys that are going to step in from day one and make an impact. And you saw some of those guys at the spring showcase on Saturday that could step up and make an impact. I think what it comes down to with them is quarterback play, offensive line play. I think they'll be fine at the skill positions. Replacing Sky Bell, Cam Edwards, that's a big ask. But I think replacing Joe Fagnano is going to be an even bigger ask for them. So I think that's something that's worth keeping an eye on. And I think the other thing here is the offensive line. You know, you're replacing a lot of talent there. And yes, you bring back Ty Chan and you bring back some of those guys, and they did a nice job fortifying that group in the portal. But, I mean, again, you're going to have multiple new starters up front. It's going to take some time for them to get acclimated, especially in Nunzio Campanile's offense. It's going to take some time. And then defensively, same thing goes for the front seven. You're not going to replace a guy like Byron Parham that easily. Guy like Aaron Key at linebacker, like those guys are going to be hard to replace, and that even goes for the secondary. When you look at guys like Damon Brinson and Devin Pringle, how do you replace those guys? So, for me, the offensive line, quarterback, the entire defense, that's going to be my focus the rest of the offseason and during training camp, because I want to see how they fill some of the holes in those areas, because those are some major holes that they need to fill. Again, we know about Bell and Edwards' production, and you're probably not going to replace that, but you've got some talent there that could at least replace a good chunk of that production. It's who's your starting quarterback, how do you protect him, and who plays defense for you, because that defense was legit last year. You lost a lot of quality guys from that side of the ball. So these are all areas that Jason Candle and his staff are going to have to really figure things out. They're going to have the rest of this offseason to do that before fall camp opens up. You were at Harvard on Saturday as well. Crimson wrapping up spring ball. Just some thoughts on that.
Sorry. Again, defense. There's a lot of questions on that offense. Now, a lot of guys are also sitting just because it's spring and, you don't want to push anything. Xavier Bascom was sitting. He's going to be huge for that offense. They're going to need the ball control.
Their best offensive player.
Yeah, they're going to need ball control. Right now, they do not have a starting quarterback. There's 3 guys in that competition, but it is as wide open as you will see in April, at least. So they can rely.
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of quarterback competitions in the area that are going to go into the summer.
Yeah,
for sure. I think you're going to see it at Harvard. You're going to see it at
Mhm.
BC. You're going to see it at UConn. You're going to see it at Merrimack. You're going to see it at UNH.
Yep.
I think you're going to have a lot of quarterback competitions going into fall camp as well.
I think you have one at Merrimack too.
Yeah,
and Holy Cross. Holy Cross is
it's another one. Yeah.
As well. So, but in terms of their offense, they're going to have to run the ball and rely on the tight ends. You still have Seamus Gilmartin, who's probably their second best offensive player. But then after that, there's just a lot of questions offensively, but defensively, man. And again, I know it's April and you're playing against teammates, but they were flying around for about 3.5 quarters running time on Saturday. Couple interceptions. The linebackers really stood out. One in particular, Sean Line, number 35, was just everywhere, all over the field. I think their linebacker unit might be the best unit that they have on that team. But defensively as a whole, they're going to be a problem. But you got to score points, and I'm just not sure how well they're going to be able to do that this year. Again, you lost one of the best quarterbacks, not only in the Ivy League, but the country, in Jaden Craig. So big shoes to fill, but it's the Ivy League. You can win on defense. You can win those scoring games. I'm just not sure how those scoring Harvard games are going to be this year.
All right, shifting gears here now. We're going to talk a little bit of high school football. Like I said, we still have plenty of spring football to talk about. UMass will have their spring game next weekend, so we'll obviously be out there for that. And we've got a bunch of other spring practices wrapping up as well.
And
Rob Gulo went down to Sacred Heart. They wrapped up their spring practice the other day, and he also visited with New Haven. So check out
we
that
have two
stuff
this,
as well on anyfootballjournal.com.
yeah, we have 2 this weekend too. Well, Merrimack and Holy Cross.
Yeah, they wrap up as well. It's crazy. Brown wraps up on Saturday as well. We'll be doing a camp visit with them, or a spring visit with them rather as well. So they're all wrapping up now. It's crazy. Before you know it, Maine, UNH, and Dartmouth started this past week, but they'll be wrapping up before you know it as well. So it's crazy. Goes by quick. Shifting gears here now to high school football. A lot going on here. A couple of hires locally this past weekend. Brooks School hired Spencer Emerson, the former Falmouth, Maine head coach. Of course, he led Falmouth to a Class B state title in 2024. He was the UNH general manager of football operations. He has decided to go back into coaching. Takes over at the Brooks School. That's a really good hire for them. Coach Emerson has a lengthy resume that is mostly comprised of college experience, but he's also been a head coach twice in Maine, and now he gets an opportunity to coach in the NEPSAC at Brooks. So we want to wish Coach Emerson good luck as a new head football coach at Brooks. We look forward to catching up with him. And Whitman Hanson has hired Bradley Leal, who's coming from Plymouth South as their new head football coach. Good hire, a guy that's familiar with the Patriot League. He's also the Pembroke High School lacrosse coach. So he knows the league well. He knows what he's walking into in terms of a program that's looking to restore the tradition that they once had. And of course, big story today, and one that's certainly near and dear to my heart, and we're going to wrap up the show with this, is Brian Lee stepping down at King Philip after 21 years, where he comprised a record of 176-62. Brian decided today to step down after 21 seasons, and it's something that, to be honest with you, Kevin, we kind of knew was a possibility. Deep down inside, I think we were all hoping, as his friends and guys that have coached with him, that he was going to stick around, but ultimately made the decision that he wanted to move on and do different things with his life, and he made that decision. But it's bittersweet. It's bittersweet. I spent 16 years with him at King Philip, and loved every second of it. Loved coaching with him. He coaxed me into coming back into the high school game in 2005 when he took the job. I was the offensive line coach at Stonehill College. He talked me into coming back to high school, and I joined his staff at KP. In 2006, I was his offensive coordinator, and I coordinated off and on for years for him. And I've worn many hats there, but it's the end of an era for sure. And that's not to say King Philip football is going to be fine. There's a lot of talent in the Tri-Town area. The program's going to be fine. Whoever gets that job is going to inherit a talented football team that's going to stay in title contention for years to come. The Pop Warner's as good as there is in Massachusetts in that area. So it's going to be a very popular job. I think there's going to be a lot of quality candidates when the position is posted. But nonetheless, hell of a run by Brian Lee there at King Philip. 21 seasons, 8 Hockomock League championships, 8 Super Bowl appearances, 4 Super Bowl titles. Last 3 years, the program went 38-1, 2 separate 25-game winning streaks in the last 8 years. You can make the case, and I know Springfield Central, Situate, they'll have a say in this conversation as well, but you can make a case that that's been the best public school program in the state the last 10 years.
100%. Look, Brian's been great to me, whether it's dealing with this site or even, excuse me, before we started. So I have nothing but respect for him. The thing that stood out to me about King Philip, whether it was covering you guys long before this or since doing this, is it was always his way. Everybody always tries to change, sort of how their team looks. You guys always just do things exactly how you want to do them. And there's a certain amount of respect that needs to go into that, because guys can easily sort of change with time, or trying to sort of make high school kids like them or respect them, or whatever it might be. And it's for you guys, it's always been the opposite. If you respect the program, you are going to adapt to us, not the other way around. And that's commendable. And it's also a reason why you guys win. There's a proven formula that works, and you guys stick to it. So that's a credit to Brian for sort of sticking to his guns when, running the football is not very popular. in 2026. You guys ground and pound the hell out of it. So I've always respected the way he goes about his business, the way you guys always go about your business as a program. And if you need to know what he meant to high school football, look at the comments under the tweet that you put out today. Hundreds and hundreds of likes and people just sort of wishing him well. It was like a funeral. Guy's not dead. He's just sort of stepping away, but it just goes to show just the impact he's had on the game. And again, you mentioned the run. Um, you and I are both big historical guys in terms of just sort of where programs stand in the history of the state. This run by King Philip is going to go down as one of the best ever. His name is always going to be attached to it. So nothing but respect and best of luck. I'm sure dealing with you, I'll hear and see him everywhere still. But what he's done for that program and football in Massachusetts, again, it's historic.
Yeah, and I say this to him all the time. When he got the job, he was John Lee's son. He's leaving the job now. He's Brian Lee. He's his own man, and he built his own legacy there. And it's an outstanding legacy that's going to outlive us all. And it's certainly going to be one of the greatest runs in state history. And I'm just proud to be a part of it in the small capacity that I was. As I said to him today when I texted with him, I said, "Thanks for letting me be a part of the ride, and I love you, brother." And that was it, and that's the best way to sum it up. Because I've been in this business a long time, and that was, that run, those 16 years, it's the best time of my football life, and to have the opportunity to do it next to people you call friends and brothers in football, and to be able to win 4 championships with those guys, and to be a part of the staff in various capacities. I mean, like I said, I've been the offensive coordinator. I've been offensive assistant. I've done quarterbacks. I've coached, different positions. Like, to just be a part of it and to see where it was. I think that gets lost on people. When Brian took that program over in 2005, King Philip was being remodeled. We didn't have a locker room. He had to build a locker room. He and one of our assistant coaches, who's a good friend of mine, Jared Leonard, they ended up building a makeshift locker room for us that year. The next year we moved into the new building, we still didn't have a locker room. The locker rooms weren't done. We had laundry baskets as lockers. So to go from that to a 2-9 season in 2007 to the next year I come back as offensive coordinator, we go 9-2 in 2008, and from that point on only have one losing season. I mean, again, I think it's a testament to him, the program he built there, the culture he built, one of Brian's biggest strengths is he gets people to buy in. It's not just the kids to buy in. He gets people to buy in. And that's one of his greatest strengths. And look, I never coached for his father. I worked for his father, but I never coached for his father. I don't know if that was a strength of his dad's or not. I would imagine it probably was. But I know this much with Brian. Brian had a knack for getting people to buy in, whether that be coaches, players, parents, supporters of the program. He knew how to get people to believe in his vision and to buy in. And that's why he was as good as he was as a head coach, and why the program was as good as it was. And the other thing that I loved about him and coaching for him, man, he let you coach. He let you coach. He wasn't a micromanager. He didn't get in the way. He didn't try to, he didn't veto you at every turn. There were times where he did veto me when I was his offensive coordinator, but there were also times when he let me do what I wanted to do. Case in point, I don't want to make this a KP football show, but 2016, we beat Reading to win our first Super Bowl. We have a 4th and 7, and we have always been a run the football, play defense, good special teams program. I looked him square in the face. I said, "Listen, man, if they get the ball back, I don't think we can win this football game. We're reeling right now on D. We need to get a first down here and put this thing away." And he looked right at me and he goes, in classic Brian fashion, he goes, "This is too stressful. Do whatever you want." He turned around and he walked away. And I'm like, "Let's go." Like, we took a timeout. We called a pass play. We hit it for 8 yards, got the first down, killed the clock, won it. But the greatness in a coach is defined by, to your point, and you bring up an excellent point about doing it his way, right? The next year, and you covered that game, We go up against an LS team that was averaging almost 50 points a game that year, and our defense, which has been our calling card forever, and this is a testament to Matt Wassel, who is moving on to coach his son at Walpole, but our defense won us that game. We won 10-7. So we can always figure out a way to either stay in games and win them, or at least be competitive in games. Even when we ran up against the CM Buzzsaw in recent years, we knew how to hang with those guys and be competitive. We knew they were better talent wise, but we knew we had tough kids, smart kids, kids that were willing to be coached and buy in. And that allowed us to be able to play with anybody on our schedule. That's why we beat the Zavarians of the world and the BC Highs and the Fians and those schools. And we were able to even hang and compete with CM because we had buy-in from the kids, and we had a staff that had bought in and believed. And it was a great run. To me, Brian is obviously a surefire Hall of Famer, and I hope he gets in the coming years. And I'm looking forward to seeing that from him. And I'm looking forward to seeing as his friend what's next for him. But he had an unbelievable run there, and a couple of things I do want to say. I've had people reach out to me. No, I'm not applying for the job. So let me put that out
Thank
there.
God.
What's that?
Thank God.
My head coaching days are behind me. I'm not putting in for it. I've already had a couple of offers to go coach somewhere else. I appreciate the offers, but right now my focus is on family, what we're doing here with New England Football Journal, Boston Baseball Journal, and work. So if I decide to coach, Stone, you'll be one of the first people I tell. But I love the game. I don't think that it's out of me yet. I don't think that I don't know. I don't want to make this about me, but I don't think I'm quite ready to hang up the whistle. TBD. But today's about Brian, and we want to wish him the best. And again, hell of a run, one of the greatest runs in state history. And I'm just glad that I got to be a small part of it. So,
But before we get to
ahead.
final thoughts, our good friend Joe Murray was talking about this before we came on the air, and he threw it out there. I just want to get your initial reaction because I know you didn't hear it. It's Scott Zolak.
About Scott Zolak coaching the team.
Yes,
I
I
don't
know
really
it's a
have a
joke.
reaction to it.
I know it's a joke, but I didn't know if you had heard it.
I did. I did.
I thought it was funny.
Yeah. I don't know. I think for me, it's this is a little hard for me because it hits close to home because I was
Sure.
a part of this.
Yeah.
And you never want a good thing to end. That's that's life, right? Like you don't want a great relationship to end. You don't want, you don't want a favorite car. You don't want to give things up in life. That's how it is. And I think it's hard, because I will say this, and maybe it's my arrogance. I still think we had a few good years left in us, but you know what? Thus is life, and people make decisions that are in their best interest. And Brian has been my friend for over 25 years, and I will do and support whatever he thinks is best for him because I love him like a brother and I care about him. And if this is, what he thought was best for him, then you know what? I fully support it. By the way, I do want to add one other thing because I've seen some of the comments, and I'll end with this. Brian chose to walk away. He was not forced out. He was not, there's nothing nefarious going on here. He himself decided, I'm content. I'm good. I did what I said I was going to do here. Okay. That's why he's walking away. And I'm not being the company guy here and trying to protect him or anything. I'm just being honest. All right. That's why he's walking away. He was ready to walk away and do something else with his life. So you know what? That's what it comes down to. It's people know when it's time, and we all have a shelf life in this business. And when you know it's time, it's time. And he knew it was time to walk away and do other things. So, but he was not forced out. And I know he made a comment that created some buzz that he gave to me. But I think at the end of the day, trust me when I tell you, this was 100% his decision and no one else's. So I think I want to clarify that. So.
I also don't think you would have put it out if that was the case.
Well, I mean, listen. I think at the end of the day, we always want to have the inside scoop, right? We want to be able to be first on a lot of stuff, and I think we do a pretty good job considering we're not a multi-million-dollar operation here. I think we do a pretty good job of getting football scoops in the area, but this one was an important one for me because I've also been a part of it. But I do want to clarify that it was his decision. He decided to hang up the whistle. No one made him do it because, I mean, again, you see some of the comments, and I think it's important to clarify that.
Twitter's
So.
gonna Twitter.
What's that?
Twitter is gonna be Twitter.
That's it. Twitter's going to tweet. All right, final thoughts here, Stone, before we wrap it up.
Nope, like I said, more spring ball coverage this weekend. We'll have Bukawa at Merrimack on Friday night, and I will be at Holy Cross on Friday night, and then obviously draft next week. We'll be all over it, and we'll be at Gillette Thursday night, TBD on Friday night, but we'll be everywhere as usual.
They have not, as far as we know, we're not sure if they're going to have us here on Friday night, correct?
So it depends on, I don't know why I just said depends like that.
It depends on.
Yeah, it's so weird. That was terrible. I don't know why I just said that. If they take someone Friday, if they take someone Thursday and do the whole photo op on Friday, we'll be there on Friday. If not, it is remote on Friday. We probably could have talked about that off the air, but now the fans know. We could be there on Friday. We might not. Who knows?
TBD. One other thing I do want to point out, too, as well, is the Shot for Life event is this Sunday at St. Seb's, the Massachusetts Shot for Life. Mike Solina and his group do a great job with that, and then they'll be in Connecticut the following weekend. So our plan is to cover both of those events, but make sure you follow the Shot for Life organization because Mike and his crew do a great job there. So again, our plan is to cover it on Sunday and the following week down in Connecticut. All right. That'll do it for this week's episode of the New England Football Show. For Kevin Stone, I'm John Sarianides. We will be back with you next week. Until then, have a great week and be happy and safe. Peace.
See ya.